In keeping with the theme of leadership of the last couple episodes, today we're going to dive into principles by renowned American hedge fund manager Ray Dalio. Again, all credit goes to Mr. Dalio. I would be honored at some point to meet you, and you should definitely read the book. It actually sits on my desk. Ray Dalio is the founder, co-chairman, and co-chief investment officer of Bridgewater Associates, which is the largest hedge fund in the world. He grew up in a middle-class neighborhood in Long Island, New York City, and began playing the stock market at age 12. He has written extensively about the economy, the nation-state, and capitalism, is the 79th richest person in the world, has been listed on Time 100's most influential people of the world, and I just found this out, is an avid outdoorsman who enjoys both hunting and fishing, and his weapon of choice is the bow. Bridgewater Associates has assets under management worth over 125 billion US dollars. This is larger than several countries in the world. As such, Mr. Dalio has a unique perspective into the global economy, historical trends, and principles for success. So, principles, what are they? They are fundamental truths that serve as the foundations for behavior that gets you what you want out of your life. To be principled is to consistently operate with principles that can be clearly explained. All principles come from a set of values. Your values are what you consider important and define who you want to be. However, they're not practical to use when faced with tough decisions. For example, one of your values might be to live a healthy lifestyle. But what exactly does that mean? Day to day, day in, day out. What are the choices that you have to make to ensure that you're living a healthy lifestyle? Does it refer to physical, mental, spiritual, emotional, social? Who knows? Instead of using values to make decisions, you should defer to principles, because without principles, you would be forced to react to circumstances that come at you without considering what you value most and how to make choices to get what you want. This would prevent you from making the most out of your life. Principles connect your values to your actions. They are beacons that guide your actions and help you successfully deal with the laws of reality. It is to your principles that you turn when you face hard choices. So tying in with the earlier example after this amazing excerpt from Mr. Dalio, perhaps with the healthy lifestyle value, your principles could be, I work out every day, or I break a sweat every day, or I only drink water every day. Now, obviously, this is a very simplified view of how we could do this, but I hope the point gets across here. You must decide what you want, what is true, and what should you do to achieve what you want in light of what is true. Success, according to him, depended on the following 4 factors. Seeking out the smartest people who disagreed with them so you could understand their reasoning, knowing when not to have an opinion, developing, testing, and systemizing timeless and universal principles, and balancing risk in ways that keep the big upside while reducing the downside. First and foremost, you must embrace reality and deal with it. You see, truth, ultimately, is the essential foundation for any good outcome. You can't get hung up on your views about how things should be, because then you'll miss out on learning on how they actually are. One of the universal truths is evolution, which is probably one of the single greatest forces in the universe. Inertia is not natural, entropy is. And so in the process of evolving, whether it's individually or as a company, things can get painful, but pain plus reflection equals progress. If you continue to push through personal evolution, you will naturally ascend to higher and higher levels. Go towards pain rather than avoiding it. The quality of your life will depend on the choices you make at these quote-unquote painful moments. Pain in life can bring about weakness, and when you encounter weakness, you have 4 choices. Deny them, accept them and work at them to convert them to strengths, accept them and find ways around them, or change what you're going after. To confront these weaknesses, don't confuse what you wish were true with what is really true. Don't worry about looking good. Worry instead about achieving your goals. Don't overweight first-order consequences relative to second and third-order ones. So there's levels to this. Every decision that you make there will be second-degree consequences and third-degree consequences. An example of this, let's just use the coronavirus pandemic. So the shutdown, that's the effect, the first decision. The second-order impact of this is that families, so the husband, wife, and kids, spend up to 10 times as much time together, literally 24/7. The third-degree impact of this is potentially more arguments and divorce rates increase, or more babies and overwhelm of hospitals in 9 months, and maybe a deeper understanding of each other, or an increase in child and spousal abuse. So as you can see, and this is why I love studying history, everything has deeper reasons and explanations for why it's occurring. The fourth principle to confront your own weaknesses is not letting pain stand in the way of progress. And lastly, don't blame bad outcomes on anyone but yourself. Extreme ownership. You can use a very simple 5-step process to get what you want out of life. And number 1 is having clear goals. Prioritize. You can have anything that you want. You just can't have everything. Very simple. Don't confuse goals with desires. A goal is something you need to achieve. Desires tend to be things you want that stand in the way of your goals. Never rule out a goal because you think it's unattainable. And I love this. Especially today, especially now, you, the individual, more than any other point in human history, can do amazing, incredible things. Number 2, identify and don't tolerate problems. View painful problems as potential improvements that are screaming at you. And don't mistake the cause of the problem with the real problem. Get to the root of it, right? Ask what is before deciding what to do about it. After this, obviously, you have to design a plan and then push through to completion. These are the 5 steps. In addition, Ray Dalio has a very important principle, which is to be radically open-minded. So recognize your barriers, your ego, and your blind spot. Those who adapt do so by teaching their brains to work in a way that doesn't come naturally. This has been one of the biggest mind shifts for me in the last several years. Just the ability to listen and being open to other people, especially when they say things that you disagree with, or even live a lifestyle that you disagree with, which can sometimes be even more difficult. The ability to slow down, listen, and really try to understand what the other person is saying, that has done worlds for me in terms of understanding leadership and development. Because now I feel like I see the world much more clearly because I'm so open to different perspectives. They don't need to be right. They don't need to be something that I align with, but I should try my best to actually understand where that person is coming from and why they think that way. And this is great because ultimately you understand that people are wired very differently. And as you move upwards and upwards as a leader who's responsible for more and more types of diverse groups of people, this is fundamental in terms of actually getting the whole ship to row forward. Because ultimately, understanding people will help you make decisions effectively. You need a clear, systematic, repeatable process that's so precise that anyone else can follow your same quality framework and make the same decisions under the same circumstances. The biggest threat to good decision-making is harmful emotion, and decision-making is a 2-step process, first learning and then deciding. And I'm sure he's drawing on his experience during the 2008 financial crisis, during which Bridgewater Associates actually did fine. You have to synthesize the situation at hand. So don't believe everything that you hear, and everything looks bigger up close, meaning that what's happening today seems like a bigger deal than it will several years in the future. New is overvalued relative to great, so don't oversqueeze the dots. And you guys are probably hearing some trends here with all the work that we're doing around leadership. He says that the best choices are the ones that have more pros than cons, not those that don't have any cons at all. And this ties in line with our talk on extreme ownership, in which it is stated that you can't wait for all the information to make a decision. You must make a decision now with all the information at hand, because you'll never be at 100%. And similarly, in this decision-making process, as a leader, You don't have a to-do list. You have a must-do list because you won't and should not have the time to deal with unimportant things. I must confess, I like this. It's clean, effective, and simple. In order to be great, he says, one can't compromise the uncompromisable. You must make your passion and your work one and the same and do it with people you want to be with. I mean, that's the whole concept of the work that we do here. The reason startups and small teams are exciting to me is because, one, you literally get to choose what you want to work on. And two, you get to, for the most part, choose who you want to work with. That's awesome. So to create this work culture, I'm going to reiterate here, you need to create a place where people believe in radical truth and transparency. They believe in meaningful work and meaningful relationships. They create a culture in which it is okay to make mistakes and unacceptable only not to learn from them. Fail well, fail often. Get over blame and credit and get on with accurate and inaccurate. A good team must always stay in sync. You got to be open-minded and assertive, and watch out for people who think it's embarrassing not to know. If it's your meeting, manage the conversation. This is a key principle that we've adopted in our work is when I have meetings with my direct reports, and this is a note I share with our managers too, you really have to let the person reporting to you drive a decent part of the conversation. Their update on what they're presenting, how they feel like their key performance indicators are going, and where they need help from you, the manager. And along those lines, in terms of dealing with people, let people talk. I think he lists 2 minutes without interruption as his standard. It's a hidden skill, especially in academia. People interrupt each other all the time, and you won't believe it how long people can talk. I guess you can because you're listening to this podcast, but in academia, people just go on and on and on. You need to know when to interrupt, but on the flip side, I think students are interrupted quite a bit, so we do our best to actually listen to them. I'm much more interested in people's reasoning for a conclusion than a specific conclusion. I'm more interested to understand how people think. When a student comes in for office hours, for example, I can pontificate and give all kinds of advice that's unwarranted, but it's probably not a good use of both of our time. What I really should be doing is active listening and try to ask many questions as possible to learn what's actually going on in that other person's head. I'm not a mind reader, surprise, surprise. So the more information I can get, the better I'm able to assess, strategize, and suggest a good course of action to solve whatever problem that they're coming in with. And this role can switch all the time. You don't necessarily always need to play the role of teacher. You could be a peer. You could be a student. And given these role shifts, maybe sometimes you can be teaching, other times you can be asking questions and learning, and other times you can be debating and discussing. This brings up the point of disagreement. You can't ignore your principles when you're making an agreement, but you also can't leave important conflicts unresolved. Once a decision is made, everyone should get behind it, even if you disagree with it. And this is something that is easier said than done, especially in my role, because there are levels to this again. If the dean says something that I disagree with, cool, we'll talk about it. If he still makes a decision and we run with that line of thinking, fantastic. I have to find a way to make sure that our unit aligns. And trust me, you can always find a way to align, because who is more important than what? And this is so important just when we look at our organization. At the surface, yeah, managing an entrepreneurship center full of programs, activities, and groups. But it's really about the people. That's really what it's all about. It's about entrepreneurs, entrepreneurial people, change makers, innovators. Great people are hard to find, and so it's no surprise that a big portion of our time is actually spent on talent acquisition, finding the best. And the best is really not tied into ability, but more so into heart. People that are here to work hard and actually do something that makes our community better. So there are some principles here that are helpful in which we treat and recognize our employees. So one, just like in the hiring process, performance in school and major are probably not great indicators of future potential, in my opinion. I mean, my background is I'm from the College of Applied Health Sciences, and then I started a software company, and now I run an entrepreneurship program. Like, what I studied in college has very little, if anything, to do with what I do now. When providing the actual job, we're looking at both stability, so making sure that people are comfortable and happy, but also opportunity. Anyone that works with us, cool, you get a job, and you get a fun job, a flexible job, a job with a lot of scope. But you also get a group and a leader and a leadership team that is completely committed to helping you succeed in other areas of life, whether it's health and wellness, your own personal business endeavors, or even just personal development. We're here, we're making an investment in you, and that is the opportunity, using this role to help develop yourself as an individual. We like each other, and we know everyone that works here is smart, so cool. That's like the baseline. That being said, we don't need to be overly kind. It's a fun place. When we evaluate accurately. We look at the facts, we look at the data, we look at the project management system, and we don't hide our observations about people because we have a culture of radical transparency and candor. We are saying things to make each other better. We don't take things personally. There's no ego. Leave it at the door. And we can do this because our standard is set so high. People know what they're coming into. There is a standard of excellence that is set here. And while it is fun, while we do enjoy it, we know we're here to do the work. We believe in it. Dalio mentions being maximally effective is the most important thing that a leader must do. It is more practical to be honest about one's uncertainties, mistakes, and weaknesses than to pretend that they don't exist. It is also more important to have good challengers than good followers. So don't just give orders and try to be followed. Try to be understood and to understand others to help everyone get in sync. Hold everyone accountable, including yourself, and appreciate them for holding you accountable. And if you've agreed with someone that something is supposed to go a certain way, make sure it goes that way unless you both get in sync about doing it differently. This comes into your role as the key communicator, the key strategist, and the key planner that has clear metrics conveying whether the team is progressing according to this plan. And of course, no plan is ever perfect. There are always problems. Problems, according to him, are like coal thrown into a locomotive engine because burning them up leads to inventing and implementing solutions for them, which propels us forward. That's such an interesting, fascinating, positive analogy. Every problem you find is an opportunity to improve your machine. Identifying and not tolerating problems is one of the most important and disliked things leaders can do. I love that. I'm going to look forward to all the problems that I'm dealing with. Hopefully it makes me better and our team better. If you're not worried, you need to worry. And if you're worried, you probably don't need to worry. This refers to the dichotomy of leadership. You must taste the soup and make sure it tastes good before going out to the customer. Every single thing that we implement here, all of our workshops, the worksheets that we give, the frameworks that we teach, every single thing, every lecture I've sat through. I've taken notes, and I've also encouraged notes and feedback from students. So each year, we're hopefully iteratively, a couple percentage points better. We want to make the program better, and we can't do that without honest feedback. If a workshop sucks, please tell me. If a guest speaker doesn't hit home, please tell me. We don't need to repeat these things. Just because we did it in the past and it worked doesn't mean it needs to work right now. And as a leader, it is so important to keep abreast of these potential problems because as a manager, you can usually fail because you're too distant from problems. You don't understand the quality of problems. You don't see it as a problem. You have poor perception about it being bad or good. You've lost sight of how bad things have become because you've just gotten used to it. You have an ego, so you're unable to solve your own problems, or you fear adverse consequences from admitting failure. You can mitigate a lot of this based on how you actually create your structure. One of the most important things is build the organization around goals rather than tasks. So I mentioned earlier that I kind of take a odyssey every year before the school year starts, somewhere quiet, away from civilization where I can think and plan and strategize about the year. Okay, so I come back with a clear picture of goals. And after that, we can obviously break down these goals into tasks. But the organization is aligned around goals. So at any point in time, if you ask any employee in any of our programs, They will be able to tell you the 3 most important things that we're working towards and what they're working on right now and how that ties in to the overall goal. Secondly, don't build the organization to fit the people. Flip it the other way around. There is no shortage of talented people, and I've made this mistake several times in the past. People that I've had great rapport with, people that are highly intelligent, people that are incredibly capable, they're sometimes not the right fit for the work that we do. A lot of times, actually. They're wonderful, they're amazing, they're world class. They're just not the right fit for us, and that's totally okay. I hope this has been helpful. You definitely should check out the book. But I also wanted to dive into Dalio's assessment. This is an instrument that he created to supplement the Principles book, and it includes contemporary developments in personality and organizational research, including those carried out by Professors Brian Little and Adam Grant, both whom have done amazing work in organizational psychology. The assessment is currently comprised of around 600 items and is continuously being revised and expanded. It's based in part on the Big Five personality assessment, an extensively researched and respected perspective within personality and organizational research. The assessment depended on rational analysis, so really analyzing the different dimensions of personality: openness, conscientiousness, extroversion, agreeableness, and stability. The team also performed detailed statistical analysis on the rational skills to ensure the highest psychometric standards. This has led to a set of 28 archetypes in 10 categories representing a larger theme. I think it's kind of interesting, so I'm going to dive into these archetypes. The first category are leaders, and the first archetype in here are commanders. These are individuals who are driven to achieve goals through determination and holding themselves and others to high standards of performance. They tend to be driven and demanding leaders who are pragmatic and results-oriented. In many ways, they are a good choice to oversee and direct complex systems and endeavors. They are most categorized by their personal drive for excellence and a willingness to dive into leadership roles and push people to deliver their best performance for the good of the organization. They are comfortable taking charge and don't mind ruffling feathers if it serves the larger mission. Recognition or status are not as important as being competent and effective. They have little difficulty correcting people on their mistakes and tend not to worry too much about offending others. They're ready to engage in argument and debate, and they tend to be very directive in their leadership style, preferring to lead through setting and applying high standards rather than through emotional and interpersonal connection. I think it might be interesting to see which archetype people think I am and which archetype you guys think you are. The second archetype in the leader category is the shaper, who visualize ambitious goals, set plans in place, and push through relentlessly to make them happen. They tend to be independent, original, driven, demanding, adaptable, and at times impatient and single-minded. Shapers dream big. Their creativity and independent style drives them to the edge of rebelliousness and sometimes pushes them over it. They're comfortable taking the lead and demanding high levels of performance from those who follow them. They have a huge ability to inspire people to get behind their vision, and they relish having fierce debates with other equally strong-willed thinkers. They have no problem telling people what they think, good, bad, and ugly, all in service of the greater mission. They excel at creating mental maps of how things can and should be done, and they have big, lasting impact on things that are important to them. Lastly, there's the quiet leader, who focuses on leading themselves and others through their open-mindedness in facing challenges, often leading as much through taking in as putting out. They tend to be more reserved, reflective, determined and humble, composed under pressure, and also being inspiring. They will really fight to gain your trust, and they will be confident, yet calm, and always resilient. The next category are advocates, and the first archetype here is the inspirer, who leads through motivating people to get behind a challenging and important idea, project, or business objective. They tend to be motivating, engaging, supportive, and leadership-oriented. They're charismatic, participative, and very people-oriented. They're usually outgoing, friendly, and very socially adventurous. Inspirers tend to prefer to drive performance and achievement through positive reinforcement rather than harsh criticism or punishment. On the flip side, they might get too emotionally invested in other people's problems and worry too much about other people's perceptions and feelings versus their own internal compass. As we're going through this, again, that phrase, the dichotomy of leadership, understanding both sides, being confident but not cocky, for example, it totally holds true. You have to be a balanced leader. The next archetype of an advocate is the campaigner, who focuses on rallying others around ideas, positions, and solutions, and achieving practical results. They tend to be ambitious, agile, inspiring, energetic, and practical, while at times being single-minded. And the last advocate is the coach, who regards self-growth, development, and learning as a cornerstone of life and daily practices, and who teaches and models these as aspirations for others. They tend to be both demanding and caring, humble and resilient. They're motivated by personal evolution, development, and learning for themselves, and make it a cornerstone of their focus. Taking people under their wing can be physically and emotionally exhausting. Coaches are givers who can be taken advantage of without being aware of it. The next category are enthusiasts, and the first archetype are promoters, who tend to be distinguished by their outgoing, charismatic nature and people skills, and their ability to tap into what motivates people. They tend to be inspiring, engaging, energetic, and agreeable, and also much more diplomatic and not confrontational. Next would be the impresario, who love to entertain, engage socially, and facilitate great experiences with others. They tend to be outgoing, inspiring, energetic, and adaptable. And lastly, there's the entertainer. They're driven by creating experiences and engaging with the world, and particularly the people in it. They're outgoing, original, agile, energetic, joyful, and lighthearted. The next category are givers, and the first archetype are peacekeepers, who relish developing positive relationships between people and seeking harmony, compromise, and cooperation. They're empathetic, agreeable, agile, and diplomatic, and they're fascinated by people's lives and learning about them in ways that can help them improve their situation and relationships. When stress and anxieties exist, they remain steady and solutions-focused. They like being liked and admired by those around them. Next is the problem solver, which is pretty self-explanatory, and the helper, which are driven by compassion and care for others and support of emotional needs. They're empathetic, nurturing, generous, and agreeable. The next category is called architects, and the first archetype is the strategist, who's adept at generating and translating concepts and ideas into effective strategies to achieve results. They tend to be both conceptual and structured thinkers, curious and open-minded, and reliable and pragmatic. Then there's the planner, which again I think is pretty self-explanatory, and the orchestrator, a person who excels at bringing people together, organizing around them, and mobilizing resources to achieve and exceed expectations. They tend to be planful, precise, engaging, and people-oriented. And as we're going through these different categories and their archetypes, you can see that there are numerous similarities within each category. Then there are producers, which include the implementer, which organizes and structures people and processes to reliably execute tasks. They tend to be precise, reliable, results-oriented, and more concrete and practical than philosophical. Next would be the investigator. Investigators are driven to research and analyze information and data to build knowledge and understanding. They tend to be logical and analytical, rigorous and more reserved and thoughtful than outgoing and expressive. And lastly would be the technician. Technicians are driven to break down, analyze, and solve problems in a methodical and practical way. They're precise, efficient, and very pragmatic. Then we have the creators, and the first archetype here is the adventurer. They're motivated by fun, exciting, and adventurous activities and pursuits. Of course, they're excitement-seeking, fun-loving, energetic, independent, and very open to new experiences. They tend to be extremely spontaneous. They're always on the go and looking out for new sensations and stimulation, and even more enticingly, new work opportunities that provide variety and stimulation. While that is a very extroverted personality, the second archetype in this group would be the artisan, who's driven to use their creativity to bring to life beautiful and well-crafted ideas. They're imaginative, detail-oriented, and attuned to others' emotions. And lastly in this group would be the inventor, which again would be very self-explanatory. But it's neat because this particular group showcases creativity at very different personality types. We have a new group called the Seekers, and the first archetype is the Explorer, which is distinct from the Adventurer in that the Explorer loves to take in new knowledge and is drawn towards new experiences through intrinsic motivations. Driven by curiosity, open-mindedness, reflection, and adaptability, which is different than just seeking adventure for fun. Then we have the thinkers, who are inclined to approach problems in an abstract, philosophical fashion. They will naturally seek the deeper meaning of issues that arise in their daily lives. They tend to be conceptual, independent, reflective, and open-minded, and at times, they might be seen as indecisive because they're just overthinking all the time. They're complex and abstract, and they're fascinating. The last archetype in this group is the growth seeker. They're defined by a deep passion for learning and personal growth and development. They're curious, humble, open to new ideas, and very adaptable. They have an endless fascination with personal growth. Love it. That sounds pretty dope. Then we have a group called fighters, and the first archetype here is the protector. They care about tradition, rules, duties, and standards, and are driven by a strong sense of personal dharma, or code of conduct. They tend to be responsible, direct, traditional, and composed. Right behind them are enforcers, who are driven to engage with the world through reliance on standards, rules, and traditions. They have to be direct and straightforward, traditional and reliable, with high standards for themselves and others. As I'm going through this, I'm sure some of you can map on potential career paths to all of these personality types. And the last group in this area would be the critic. And very self-explanatory here. Critics freely express their opinions and love debating different perspectives with others. They are here to constructively, hopefully, make other people better. And the last group here is called individualistic. It's something that doesn't fit into all these categories. And reading through all these categories to all of you right now, there are some distinctions between the groups for sure, but the archetypes themselves have a lot of overlap. Now, I'm not a huge fan of personality types for several reasons. I don't like labels, and I like people to be individualistic, as the last group states. However, I'm sure some of these notes could be helpful in determining what your style is and what matters to you and what motivates you. So go ahead and check out the test and let me know what is your leadership personality style. See you guys in the next one.